Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Captain's Log Supplemental.
Welcome to the IndieBlogg Supplemental for March 2007. In this special supplemental edition of the IndieBlogg, we're going to be talking to David Uosikinen of the Hooters in a very unique video blog style interview. So strap yourselves in because we're about to go to work. I just want to remind everybody that the Hooters did not name their band after any naughty bits. The Hooters were named after an instrument, otherwise known as the melodica. It's a free reed instrument, and it's very much like an accordion in many ways. They weren't named after a restaurant either. That came much later. It's time for Tuesdays. Before we begin the interview segment of this IndieBlogg Supplemental, I just want to remind everybody that we're sponsored by IndieGate.com, the online independent music store, and the Independent Music Conference, which takes place in Philadelphia every Labor Day weekend. This year it starts August 29th and runs through September 3rd. So visit the website imc07.com and be sure you sign up for the conference. It's only $39 for registration at this time, but you'd better hurry because those prices will go up. A little bit of background about the Hooters, just to refresh your memory. They were formed in 1980. They were an independent band. They released their first album entitled Amore, all on their own, and they sold over 100,000 copies. Now, that's impressive even today, but that was 1980. So for an independent band, it was an incredible feat. The founding members were Eric Bazilian, Rob Hyman, Dave Uosikinen, Bobby Woods, and John Kuzma. Bobby and John later left the band in 1983, but they were there in the early years. The Hooters formed in 1980. They played their very first show on the 4th of July. They were from Philadelphia, and they stayed true to their roots, and have stayed true to their roots even to this day. Most of them still live in the area, or they visit the area quite frequently. They still have their family and friends there. They're very connected to Philadelphia even to this day. So let's move right over to the IndieGate Command Center, where I've got some stuff up on the screens that I want to show you as we begin the interview process with Dave Uosikinen of the Hooters. Here in the center, we've got an image of the Hooters. Right here in the middle, this is Dave Uosikinen. He's the drummer. This is Rob Hyman holding the famous instrument that they named the band after, the Hooter. I'll show you that right here. This is where you would blow into the instrument. No! And these, of course, the keyboards. So this is the Hooter.
Fascinating.
On the far left, we have Fran Smith Jr. Right here, this is Eric Bazilian. And over here is John Lilly. Now, on this screen, you'll notice we've got ElmStreetStudios.com online. This is where the Hooters are recording their new CD. And Hooters fans are pretty excited about this because they haven't released anything in quite some time. So people are eagerly awaiting the new disc, which is about to hit the street any day, any minute probably. Now, I want to point something out because as I was researching their discography online, I found lots and lots of albums and CDs that had been released over the years. But check this out. On their website, you'll notice there's only 8 discs listed. So where are all the other ones from? Are they bootlegs? What are they? So we're going to ask Dave that in just a nanosecond. But first I want to go through the discography real quick, and he might want to comment on some of these. So first they released Amore. This was their independent release, sold 100,000 copies. That was followed up with Nervous Nights, their first major label release. They did really well with that one. Then came One Way Home. Next we had Zigzag. Then Out of Body. Hooters Live. Hooterization, a retrospective. And Super Hits. So, first question for you, Dave, is a two-parter. One, what about all those other CDs and albums I see online? Are they just bootlegs? What are they? Are they official releases for overseas markets? Can you comment on that? And then, of course, these releases here. I want you to talk quickly about those. If there's anything noteworthy you'd like to comment on about the CDs that are listed in the discography on your website. That's your first question.
Hi, Intermix, Dave Uosikinen of the Hooters and V-Mix. We're here outside in the V-Mix courtyard. You check out the vibe. It's very serene. My friend Chris Carneal is actually doing the filming. used to work at 20th Century Fox, so he really knows what he's doing. Hooters CDs, Amore. Well, actually, Amore, there were two or three 245s before Amore was recorded, and Fighting on the Same Side was the first one, recorded in 1981. And then we did All You Zombies, a studio version of that, I think, and a song called Wireless, and that was with John Kuzma and Bobby Woods in the band. And after that that lineup, Rob and Eric went to work with Cyndi Lauper. And when they finished that record, they decided they wanted to put the band back together again, and they called, hey, we're putting the band back together again. Of course, I, jumped up and said, no. I said, sure, but it was a different lineup. It was actually, I was playing in a band with Rob Miller. Played with a guy named Robert Hazard, and he was unceremoniously kicked out of Robert Hazard's band for being too good looking. No shit, it's the truth. And so him and I had a band called Youth Camp, and oddly enough, that was with Joey Wilson and John Kuzma, who was one of the first guitar players in the Hooters. And Eric actually came in and sat in with us a couple times and just really liked Rob's playing. Rob is a real musical guy. And so he was our bass player in when we got together, reformed, and consequently recorded Amore. And also at that time, John Lilly joined the band, and John also worked with Rob Miller and Robert Hazard and the Heroes. Does all of this make any sense to you? I don't know. It's a little confusing to me. It's a Philly thing. Anyway, that band, we recorded Amore, and like you said on your blog, it sold over 100,000 copies. It was an independent record. We made for, I think, around $11,000, which was when you look at what it cost to make records back then, it was minuscule, but a lot of money to us. And we had really good friends. We had some good friends that had a studio in town called Studio 4, and that was Phil Niccolo and Dave Johnson and Joe Niccolo, and they cut us some breaks, so to speak, and we went there and we recorded that record. Phil engineered it, and Rob and Eric produced it, and we had our input into what we wanted it to sound like, and it was a great experience. And I think that record gave us leverage because of the amount of records it sold, and we were able to make some money. At that time, I didn't have to work a day gig. I could play the drums at nighttime, play with the band, and get paid to do it. So I thought that was great. And eventually, from doing our live shows and playing tons of gigs up and down the coast, Boston, New York, Washington D.C., the old 930 Club. We actually even played a gig with Stevie Ray Vaughan at the Wax Museum, which was pretty amazing. Anyway, we ended up getting signed to. We had a couple record companies that were interested in us, and first I think Atlantic Records came and they saw us play at 23 East, and there were record companies always saying, "Hey, come to New York and play up here," but because we had the audience, we said at that time we felt we had a little leverage. We played in Philly, so they were coming to see us. We had a friend, his name was our producer, who ended up producing the Nervous Night, was a guy named Rick Chertoff. He played in a band with Rob and Eric, and also went to Penn with those guys, and they had a band called Wax. So they were always in touch, and then if there were some sessions and they needed a keyboard player or a guitar player, Rick was always calling those guys up and throwing us some work. And but Rick started mentoring the band, from the early days of the Hooters up till 1985. And I think he brought Mickey Eichner and Al Teller, and all those guys all came to a place called Chestnut Cabaret, and they saw the band playing in their environment, their audience, our fans, and we ended up getting signed to Columbia Records. It was a big thrill. Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, just to mention a few that were on the label, and so just being on Columbia was pretty amazing for all of us. We recorded Nervous Night, which is, I wasn't sure I was going to play on that record. I remember at the time Rick would use session guys to play on all his work. You know, it just kind of expedited things. So I remember being somewhat nervous, thinking, man, if I don't cut this. I remember the first day I showed up at the record plant in New York, just knowing that if I didn't cut it, Anton Fig was going to be showing up at 6 o'clock and recutting my tracks. But it worked out.
Are you sure it isn't time for a colorful metaphor?
And I ended up playing on all the Hooter records, so that was a nice deal, and it was a real lesson for me on, you know, Anton was actually working in the next room, and I got a chance to watch him work, and I learned a lot. And I learned a lot from working with Rick, too.
Thanks, Dave. This is some interesting stuff, this Hooter history. We're going to come back to you in just a few minutes with more on the Hooters, more about the albums. But first, we're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsor, and then we want everybody to tune in to part 2 of the IndieBlogg Supplemental interview with Dave Uosikinen of the Hooters. Well, the Independent Music Conference is different from other events in that it's geared towards independent musicians who are looking to market their own product directly to their consumer. So there's a strong focus on the educational aspect, the networking, the learning, the support, and there's less of a focus on the performance side of the event, which is mainly the element of other conferences. They stress the performance. They don't work as hard on the educational agenda. It is a music conference in the true sense of the word conference. And in the music industry, that word has come to mean other things. And largely the other conferences have become performances. They're just big festivals, and it's all about the shows. I believe a conference should really be an industry gathering to learn and to network. So we're trying to get back to the root of the true meaning of that word with this event and turn it into a learning, networking, educational event. Be sure to watch part 2 of the IndieBlogg Supplemental interview with David Uosikinen.